You know, I got to be honest with you here, boss. You don't want to give me that gun. 'Cause I'd probably shoot you with it.
Duck down, y'all. This is Sessa with your Black Agenda Report morning shot for November 17th, 2010. The United States' long-standing tradition of assassination is always coupled with an extensive propaganda onslaught. This assassination can either be intended to kill organizational and ideological credibility or to physically eliminate the people who support those organizations and ideas. Whether privately or publicly, the U.S. consistently finds a way to convince you and me to be the ventriloquist dolls for its satanic sound bites.
When most Americans open a newspaper, they expect all the news that's fit to print, not to plant. But declassified documents show that in the 1980s, the State Department was doing exactly that. Known as white propaganda, editorials and stories were planted and pushed in major U.S. media outlets, the Washington Post, CBS, USA Today, the New York Times, and more, ensuring favorable coverage of the controversial Contra War in Central America. Techniques the CIA uses abroad to influence other populations and other governments.
The Office of Public Diplomacy had a very innocuous sounding name, but in fact it was a sinister, covert office running illegal propaganda operations.
Let's take some recent examples. On November 5th, 2010, George Russell, the executive director of Fox News and frequent op-ed contributor, released an article entitled UN Human Rights Council Takes Aim at New Target, United States, with the intention to discredit the recent United Nations Universal Periodic Review process held in Geneva. However, Russell's target was not only the process, but also the organization that submitted the most comprehensive documentation of human rights abuses by the United States, the United States Human Rights Network, which is composed of by many current African freedom movement warriors. Russell makes the typical Fox News attempt to discredit the U.S. HRN's effort by positioning America as, quote-unquote, the country that has done the most in the past 40 years to establish human rights as a global theme. We already know where he's coming from in the first sentences, where he doubts that the U.S. discriminates against Muslims, that its police are barbaric, and that it has been holding political prisoners behind bars for years. He even tries to cheapen the political prisoner issue by calling it something from a, quote-unquote, left-wing time tunnel. Therefore, his article is less a position paper than that it can serve as an internal study for the Black liberation movement on how the powers that be utilize mass media to begin extensive propaganda campaigns that end in the repression of forces that are on our side. Russell went to great cyber lengths in studying the origin of USHRN, its primary funding sources, its current members, and the political engagement of its leadership. Which means that we can be sure that the U.S. intelligence apparatus has already begun, and after the Universal Periodic Review process, will ferociously persist in this effort to COINTEL profile the USHRN. Let this be a lesson in intelligence. Them on us, and us on them. More importantly, we cannot let this media warfare on one of the organizations that's actually doing something for our folk go unpunished. The best way to punish this is to continue the work of the USHRN and do everything in our abilities to protect it. When we explore the global context of propaganda, the resurfacing of Otto Reich serves as a classic profile in how the press can be used to sway what you think about whomever they want you to think about.
Hello, my name is Otto Reich.
Meet the man at the forefront of this effort. Cuban-American Cold Warrior and former head of the Office of Public Diplomacy for Latin America. Reich has the reputation of a tough operator.
That's a lie. You are telling a lie.
Employing special psychological operations experts to craft messages for the American public.
Putting people secretly on the U.S. payroll, reporters, writers, and having them then pretend to be independent and writing op-ed pieces, and nobody would know that this was a U.S. government financed and directed opinion, but from these declassified documents we know that Otto Reich was behind these.
In 2009, immediately after the president of Honduras was overthrown in a military coup, Otto Reich resurfaced in the mainstream media, quoted by columnists, interviewed by pundits.
Well, when I want to know about stuff like this, there's nobody else better to call on than the guy you're about to meet right here. he could better explain what is happening in Honduras than just about anybody else. Otto Reich is who I'm talking about.
Ever since he was in charge of what he was doing back in the 80s, and he's been around like a ghost, and you see him personally writing op-eds for important newspapers in the U.S., and you see him working behind the scenes for the coup-mongers in Honduras. And what you have to wonder is who's paying him to do so.
White propaganda has proven effective in garnering support for America's more contentious foreign policy.
And just as surveillance techniques have become updated with technological breakthroughs, so have propaganda methods themselves. There is a history of video games being used to win the hearts and minds of even this country's youth. For example, Mercenaries 2, World in Flames, set in Caracas and Margarita Island, Venezuela, and released in 2008.
Alright guys, we got a new job available. It's a simple verification job on an island just off the coast. So whoever wants the job gets a nice payday.
I love working for oil companies.
This is your target, Rodrigo Gonzalez. Universal Petroleum want him, dead or alive. So feel free to, you know,
Improvise.
Why should today be any different?
I'm beginning to like Venezuela.
Or most recently, meaning last week, this video game as public opinion shaper came in the form of Black Ops 2, Call of Duty, where the gamer plays the role of a special operative as he saves the US from a communist plot, traveling between Cuba, Vietnam, and the Soviet Union. He kills Fidel Castro in the Bay of Pigs or Playa Girón invasion of Cuba, which is the first mission of the game.
This is it. Really make history.
Crazy bitch! He uses a human shield, and she still protects him?
Actually, he only kills Castro's body double. The first mission, though? Damn. And although some of our comrades in resistance might decry the use of the tool as contributing to the dumbing down of our youth, propaganda in the form of limited distribution video games is a worthwhile idea to pursue. Just ask Hezbollah's internet division, who released a video game in 2007 to celebrate their defeat of Israel in the over 30-day-long war of the summer of 2006. Think of an Umkonto Weisizwe video game, or even a role-playing one-person shooter starring Harriet Tubman where she can time travel, update her weaponry, and even travel back in time to before the Ma'afa took place and arm Africans with RPGs. A war strategy game about the Haitian Revolution even. Or the video game where the African soldier switches sides to fight alongside the Vietnamese. And I know y'all are waiting for the game on how to use traditional African spiritualities to wage plantation rebellions. All you brothers and sisters who grew up on or around gaming are smiling right now, because you know that Pac-Man and Mrs. Pac-Man are better names for African insurgents than they ever were for yellow gumballs with sheets and lips. The larger point is to understand the enemy's use of propaganda to assassinate us in the eyes of our own people and potential allies, and what we must do to counteract it, as well as be organized in such a way that we can complement our reliance on theoretician activists with an aggressive recruitment of soldiers in the fields of science and technology who create propaganda that not only reaches our people, but creates within them the bold spirit of resistance.
I just met the most marvelous bunch of niggers. the most marvelous bunch of... You get 'em?